we can go from there. So the purpose of today's session is to get a bit more real feedback on your brand and making sure that your brand is consistent with the story that you're telling. And so the majority of the session, we're going to throw it over to you, and we want you to pitch DJ what it is that you're working on. So elevator pitch of what the problem is that you're solving and how you're solving it. But then at the same time, if you've got any visuals or anything you want to show, it might be a logo or a web page or something that you've just mocked up on Canva. It doesn't have to be professional at all, but just pop yourself on screen share and show us what you're working on. And then we'll get a little bit of feedback into whether what you're showing with your brand is consistent with what it is that you're trying to achieve. So before we get into that, we'll just set the scene a little bit. So DJ, do you want to just take it away, give us a brief intro to you and yourself and your background and history, and then we can go from there.
Awesome, thank you very much. Hey everyone, thank you for having me, giving your time. Yes, I'm DJ, short for David Johnson. There's just many Davids in the workplaces, so it's better for my neck to stop turning pre-COVID. I am a designer, so I actually run a design agency called Zero to Design, which is specifically geared towards helping startups and scale-ups improve their design and actually give an ROI, return on investment, to design. I've been designing for about 8 years now. I did computer science before that, so I was in the kind of coding technical space. Found out during my degree that I like to code, but I like the output more, and so that's what kind of led me to design. So now I'm doing that. Now have a team of 5 designers, and yeah, we're just kind of helping startups realize the importance of design. And I was going to say a few bits and bobs later on, but I'll let kind of Purdy give a bit more intro first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just going to jump straight into it really based on what you said. So when you're talking about return on investment for design or brand, how exactly would you measure that, or how have other founders or startups done it and managed to see a return on that investment?
Yeah, so this is a big question. I think a lot of companies look at design as a bit of a cost, and a bit of a nice to have at certain points. So the way I say there's 2 kind of extremes is that when people first start their company, they go to like Fiverr and Upwork to get everything done at some point, or they maybe just do everything themselves. The other extreme is when they actually make it and they've got lots of funding, they'll then go to a recruiter who will give you a very expensive designer. And that was my job for a long time, being that expensive designer through the recruiter. So it's a very kind of extreme polar opposites of how people actually kind of like think about design and source design. And I think the problem is because we're not actually putting a measure on design. So when we think about design, you could be thinking about purely visual things of like, does this look pretty? Does it look nice? Am I happy with the way this looks? But obviously it kind of goes a lot further than that. It goes into the way things work. It goes into the impressions that people perceive when they see your brand, when they see your product, when they see your slide deck, these kind of things. So the way that we actually put an ROI on design is we always actually give a metric or a goal that we're trying to achieve from design. So let's talk about a pitch deck. A very easy metric for a pitch deck is obviously to get investment. Now, that obviously is very hard to kind of pinpoint exactly to design, but you can break it down and you can figure out how design play an impact to a pitch deck and get an investment. So is there a story, for example? Is it very seamless to go from the start of your pitch deck to the end of the pitch deck? Are people going to have questions during your pitch deck? And are you able to kind of intercept those by already having their answers to those questions whilst you're going along? So that's kind of a good example of how you can apply the kind of UX aspect into a pitch deck because you're almost anticipating questions. And then on the visual side, it's a question of, do people think about the visuals when it comes to a pitch deck? Now, for a pitch deck, you probably want people to kind of see design as invisible rather than actually visible. So they probably shouldn't comment on the design, just be like, it just kind of felt slick, smooth. But if they see a pitch deck that is a little bit misaligned, you've got boxes that don't quite line up and these kind of things, psychology will, unfortunately, even the best of investors that try to kind of focus on your problem and your utility, they will have this niggling thing in the back of their mind of, oh, it didn't quite look pretty, or didn't quite look right, and therefore I'm also going to lower the kind of quality of what I think the offering is as well. So essentially, I've kind of gone around the houses there, but what I'm saying is that you would measure the output of it by trying to kind of mitigate those things. So figuring out, do people think design is invisible? So you could almost kind of like, when actually doing it, if I were to do a pitch deck and I was going for funding, I would actually ask investors afterwards, can I get some feedback on that presentation from a design aspect? Obviously from other aspects as well, you get feedback on, and then you can measure it by having questions like, what did you think of the visual presentation? Or what did you think about the flow of the presentation? And that way you can incorporate feedback. You can have a goal of, I would love I would love 2 investors to be like, the visual presentation was 4 out of 5 and above. And that way we've kind of now got some way of actually measuring the impact of design. So that was one example, but there could be many more.
Yeah, it's worth saying as well that we've spoken to investors about this, and we've asked them how important design is when they're looking through a deck, because obviously we're talking about problem, solution, we talk about metrics a lot, we talk about the team, total addressable market. There's obviously loads of things that investors are interested in, but especially if you're selling B2C, design is so important, and investors want to know that you're going to be able to attract a huge audience with your brand, and then branding becomes even more important because they want to see this kind of thing that you can use on TikTok or Instagram, and they feel confident that it's going to win people over. And so they look at that from the word go. If you do it on the deck, then it's likely that you're going to be able to produce similar content online and use that to win customers over. So it is really important. And the other thing is that it's just showing that you have attention to detail. And it's all of these other kind of soft skills that you've got that investors will like to see. If there's things that are out of place on a deck, then what does that mean with how you're, looking through your numbers, or how you speak to customers, or how you manage your inbox? And so it's all about kind of organization, attention to detail, and like showing that you have kind of a bit of care in what you're portraying out to the world about your business. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, DJ.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing as well, because it's very easy when you get into these conversations to think that you have to now do, or the first thing that comes to mind is like, oh, I need to do a rebrand, or I have to kind of redesign everything and make it really awesome. And my point, the whole reason kind of why I started doing design and why kind of my focus is startups, because it's really about doing the low hanging fruit. So when Purdy's saying like it has an effect, right? They then think, oh, you can do that. If you can do this in a slide deck, you can do this in a product. That is very much true. And there's a certain threshold for them to believe that you can do those things. Now, you don't need to kind of go like 100% and be like the all singing, dancing, incredible pitch deck, for example, to make them believe you can go and execute elsewhere. But there is kind of like a minimum bar threshold of things that would be good to have. And that's kind of the stuff that I think is important to understand, that it's worth it to kind of figure out those things. And then as you kind of scale up, you can look at the other things, but don't simply neglect it. And then don't, on the other hand, if you start believing this, don't be like, I need a whole rebrand. Like there is a middle ground and like a threshold, and that's a threshold that I would love, startups like yourselves to achieve.
Yeah, I've got 2 other questions. Silva has a question as well, because the hand's raised. Anybody else that has any specific questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. And then for anyone that showed up late, the idea is that we're going to actually go through some branding exercises live with any brave founders that want to show DJ where they've got to at this point. Silva, do you want to ask your question now? And then I'll go back to my 2.
Hi, DJ. A really quick question. I run a fashion brand, so it's all about branding. It's all about the right colors, fonts, everything. Can you go overboard with your branding in the pitch deck? Because obviously it needs to be, the content is important rather than just brilliant branding. And the other question, would you advise to go a bit, rather than do a traditional pitch deck, to add a video? Just to give us something like a bit of a different edge.
Cool. Okay. So on the first question, can you go overboard with a pitch deck and branding? I'm going to say I don't think you can go overboard, but I don't know if I'd advise it, in the sense, when I was talking about that threshold before, you don't necessarily need to kind of like be this incredible thing where your brand like really screams through like an investment deck, but it is nice if your brand does come through. So it's definitely not gonna, I don't think it's gonna hinder you. It's definitely also gonna make you stand out a little bit more because you can tie everything together. Hopefully when they see your pitch deck, if you've got a product or anything else, it kind of all makes sense all in one. So it's definitely gonna be a good thing. But yeah, I wouldn't worry necessarily about kind of going too much. If you have already done it, great, that's fine. You don't need to take it away. But I don't think you need to like completely sell the brand in the pitch deck, because ultimately they are going to be looking for those fundamentals, right? But having the brand in there is just a nice added touch. So I think it is good to have it in there, but I don't think you can probably go, I don't think you probably need to go overboard. And then, did that answer the question?
Yeah, he did. And it was about a video as well, because I do like lots of talks and stuff and conferences and stuff. So I don't know whether that would add any value, or they would just be like, oh, forget it. And I just want to read the deck, which is just that, you know, a five minutes, or sometimes even less than 5 minutes. They just whiz through it. They don't want to be listening to video, 2-minute video, or I don't know, 10-minute video.
Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert in exactly how to kind of catch in different formats of like media, but from my knowledge and you know, I know a fair few and follow them on LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. And I think, as you say, they're going to be going through many applications. So any way you can stand out is going to be good. But I think you have to be careful with the video, because some people actually, as you say, may prefer to read. So if you can still, as long as you're not going to run the risk that if they don't play the video, then they're not going to get the information, I think it could be fine, because then you kind of got the best of both worlds. So they can actually watch the video. And again, if you have the video, make sure it's short and snappy. Like, I think it's nice and unique to have a video, but if they get bored after 10 seconds, it's actually done the opposite thing. So I think it can be a good, unique way to do it, but I'd make sure that if they don't watch the video, they've got enough information to make a decision otherwise.
It's also worth knowing, if you're going to be sending investors emails with your deck, the majority of them will look at it on their phone. They probably won't be looking at it on a desktop computer. So if you're embedding videos or anything like that, just be aware that they're going to be looking at it on a small screen. That's even with the slides and how much information you're putting on the slides. If there's loads of text on there and someone's looking on their phone, they can't read it. They spend like 15 to 20 seconds. And the best way to send it is as a doc send link. So it's on a live link. You can also send a Canva link or something rather than a PDF. But just think about, how the person is receiving the information and what the best way for you to display it is for them to be able to receive it well.
Love it. Thank you.
Another question from me, and again, any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Let's say you've just started a business and you've got the name of the business and you know what problem you're solving, generally speaking, but you're not 100% sure, you're still validating it. How would you go about creating a brand when you have nothing but a name? What do you recommend people do in the first instance, assuming they have zero or very little money?
Good question. So I'd probably need to, definitely after this, I can share some links of some tools that can generate assets and that kind of stuff. But I think, generally kind of when we talk about having a brand, I think you need to have the mission statement, be clear about what you do, who you're serving, and how you're going to help them get a result. So I think it's important to have that kind of I call it the text or the content part of your brand, which means that whenever you're talking about it in your elevator pitch, or whenever you're on, if it's on your website or your socials, that you actually have a very clear, succinct message that is going to be heard across all these different areas. So I think that's probably one very important thing, which obviously is free, you don't need to do much. The second thing is then to maybe generate some kind of visuals. So you can generate logos, color palettes, even a name as well. If you didn't have one, there are tools online that can do this for you. You can type in like a little bit about your product and it will just kind of like generate name, logo, color palettes, that kind of stuff. And some of you might be thinking, well, it's a little bit reductive. Do I want to leave it down to, kind of this tool that generates it? And I think at the initial the kind of like the early stage there, I think, yes, actually, it doesn't matter too much as long as you have something and it's consistent. well, I'm going to keep coming back to what I'm saying, what the threshold is for design, and it's not to get this incredible brand. Most companies, once they get funding or whatever, they end up doing a rebrand because they're like, oops, it's a little bit old now. We've got a new mission, we've got a new pivot, or we're going to go harder, and then we do a rebrand. So I think you don't need to kind of hold too much importance on getting it right. I'm going to put quotes in the air, but I think you want to have that kind of minimum set. So getting that logo, getting the kind of brand colors, which you can then use in your pitch deck and your website, like using certain kind of key colors, and then getting any kind of like assets and visuals you can have as well. And again, I don't know that aside off the top of my head, but I will kind of make sure that I circulate them afterwards, and you can have this all generated for you. Go through it, figure it out, and just have that as your kind of starting point.
Cool. Then the other thing I was just going to ask is, if you go to Canva, there's obviously a huge amount of templates, and if anyone that doesn't know Canva, you should check it out, because it's like a design software. So if you're creating a pitch deck, they already have templates of loads of different styles of pitch deck. And then you can kind of play around with the colors and the fonts and obviously add in all of the text so it's yours. But because the template is there, if you aren't particularly good at design personally, you don't have to worry about it because the assets are all there, and it creates something that looks professional without that much work. But I think one of the issues with Canva is that you can edit so much that you can make it worse again. So I just wanted to know whether you had any tips for if someone is using that kind of software to make sure that they're making the most out of it and not making their life worse by kind of like Silver was saying, like almost like over designing it because they get stuck in that phase.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, good shout to bring up Canva. I forgot to mention that. But yeah, that's the kind of the go-to tool, I think, at this stage. Like we've got clients that have funding and want to do this stuff, and I'm like, just use Canva, even if they've got funding, but there's no point actually doing stuff just yet. And that's because Canva stuff is brilliant, right? And they have lots of templates, different variations. And I think those templates are actually made by designers. So kind of to Purdy's point, I wouldn't play around too much unless you think you've got the designer eye. Unless someone's complimented your skills in the past, maybe you could have a little bit of a tinker with it. But I think generally kind of sticking to the templates and then just customizing the obvious bits, like the colors, like the fonts. So hopefully that's the kind of stuff I mentioned before. You can use the other tool to generate some of that for you, or you can kind of go with the kind of default at the beginning. But I think generally these things have been designed. So I would say stay away from kind of like over engineering. And also because when we talk about ROI, when it comes to design, the ROI of you tinkering around in Canva, tweaking those templates is going to be extremely low. I'd probably say negative at that stage. The ROI of you using Canva and using Canva for all your assets, it's going to be very big. So that's going to give you a nice, consistent, polished look for all of the assets you're creating. But tinkering, I think that's what I probably stay away from, again, unless you have some expertise in that domain.
One of the things about Canva is investors are now so used to seeing Canva, like Canva style designs, templates, that level of professionalism, that if you create a deck in PowerPoint and it's just a blank white slide with some text on it in Arial font, they will know that you could have done so much more for no additional money if you use something like Canva, which means that the bar has been raised slightly. So if you haven't used it before, definitely go check it out, because it just means that you're going to be comparable with other startups that are sending through decks. It takes a little bit of time to get your head around, I think, but it's pretty user-friendly, and definitely worth spending that time on. Someone is asking about colors. Now, I don't know if this is better for going through it live, but if you're not really sure what colors to go for, whether you should have like an icon or something, how do you make that decision?
Yeah, I'll start with colors first. I think so. When it comes to choosing colors for branding, there's a lot of psychology behind colors and the emotions that they elicit. There is a very popular image that actually shows like a variety of different brands and their colors and kind of why they went for it and what the emotions are behind it. So I think there's definitely an opportunity to leverage that. That's essentially what most companies, when they do a rebrand, will leverage that kind of stuff. So maybe it might be a good time to share my screen, just if I can bring something up, or I can give you an example of what I mean from this psychology behind it. But essentially, different colors do elicit different emotions, and you can leverage that by making use of those colors. And I think that's the way that I would choose at this stage. I wouldn't probably recommend choosing based on like your personal preference or things like that. Can everyone see my screen? Is that?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so here is an image. I think there's others as well that kind of show logos and stuff, but this is an example where it kind of gives you some words around what a color does and what kind of emotions it elicits. So depending on what your product is, you can actually figure out what you want to go for. So red here, you kind of got power, passion, energy. Obviously you've got a negative side as well, but probably stay more towards positive side for this kind of activity. If you go to turquoise and the kind of greens, you've got communication, clarity, calmness. If you go to blue, you've got kind of trust, loyalty, dependability, logic, security. And that's where you probably see a lot of kind of social media and kind of like some tech companies, a lot have this kind of blue because they're going for this kind of classic feelings here. So there's definitely kind of like, this is the way I would do it. I would lean on this kind of psychology of color to kind of choose the brand. And then the only second thing I'd say in terms of that when it comes to colors is that you have to be aware that some colors are good for branding, but bad for readability and legibility, that kind of stuff. So especially even if you see it on this screen now, there's one color that you'll probably highlight that's not great is yellow. So yellow is obviously, it's a nice color, it's good, but when it comes to text, it's not the best. And actually there is an accessibility standards that actually kind of tell you various colors that work on certain backgrounds. So just one thing to bear in mind that you are free to kind of create your brand in these colors when it comes to psychology, but some of the colors don't have the best contrast. So it's good to kind of have a different shade of that color. So if let's say you were kind of going like for an orange, you might then have like a dark orange, which you use maybe in your pitch decks or in your actual product or in your website, that kind of stuff, because it will just make sure that people can actually read the text.
Cool. Any tips on like iconography or having a visual associated with the brand?
Yeah, this is so I guess you mean with the logo or just generally in the product?
Yeah, within a logo.
So yeah, I think the logo, essentially what logos are about is memorability, right? It's an easy way for people to recall your brand and come back in an easy way. And essentially what we're doing with branding in general is giving people lots of small bits of information so that they can easily recognize it, easily kind of refer it, that kind of stuff. Having an icon or using imagery will definitely help that. Bearing in mind that obviously some people are more visual than others. So people that are more visual, they'll kind of prefer a logo. I think when it comes to choosing that, again, it's kind of really going to go back to basics. So I think that's what I spoke about at the beginning around like, what does your product do? Who does it serve? And what result are you going to give them? You want to try and have the kind of the logos and the icons that match that text there. So let's say I am creating an investment company, then obviously you're going to start thinking about some icons that are around finance and around money and around the result, which is going to increase in money. So I think it's a good way, if you want to kind of think about what icons or imagery you can use, start brainstorming the actual words behind it. So what are the words that you offer? What are the words that relate to the result you're going to deliver? Or what are the words that relate to the people that you're targeting? And that kind of help give you a bank of words. And from there, you could then start looking at what kind of icons come to mind or what kind of imagery comes to mind for those words.
Awesome. We've got some people that are ready to get some live feedback from you. So we'll just go from the top. So Abby, you were the first to say yes. Do you want to share your screen or show us all and DJ something, and then we'll go from there?
Yes, I can share my screen. I think it's that one. Can you guys see?
Yeah. And do you want to just give a quick, like 1 to 2 sentences on what Barback does for a bit of context, or your mission?
Okay, very quickly. Basically, we are a hospitality staffing platform that is aiming to solve the labor crisis by matching venues and workers and metricing the workers, and then also providing like a bunch of benefits in order to keep people within the industry, if that makes sense. So this is our like pitch deck. So I've kind of stuck to a color palette of, I think I have 3 hex codes, and 1 kind of font family. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I have a few questions, sorry. So is there a difference between like corporate and customer branding? So I'm going to show you so this is the logo. That's the Instagram logo. This is the first sticker. This is our app. Sorry, I'm going through.
One sec. I don't think the screen is sharing. It's still the deck.
How do I? 2 seconds. Sorry.
I think you were sharing just your screen, like a particular window.
Yeah, I think sharing just one window, but if you share the whole screen, you might be able to click through.
How's that?
But yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Perfect.
So this is our logo. Instagram logo. First sticker. This is what our app looks like. So I've kept the colors the same and the font's very similar, but I'm worried that kind of like the style we're going for is a little bit too childish. But the thing is, we have a very wide customer base, all from like freshers at uni all the way up to veterans of the industry who own like 3 different restaurants or something. And I'm just a little bit. So this is our venue pitch deck. Again, same colors, same kind of vibe. But again, I'm just worried it's too childish. But at the same time, I really want to look approachable and kind of like warm and welcoming, which is what I think the colors kind of do. I'm at loss. I think it's too childish, but I also don't know how to make it more corporate without making it too corporate.
Do you mind I give you some feedback?
Yes, please.
I like the color, the reddish color. Now with the yellow and the reddish, I know there has to be a complement. I don't know, is this yellow complementary to the red? There is in branding colors, there's like there's some websites that show complementary colors or a range of colors that you can complement. I like a person. I like this peachy reddish, not red. It's not aggressive.
It's a coral.
Yeah. Yes, I like that one.
Yeah, I
don't know about the yellow, but you could see the complementary colors in the range. Maybe you can complement this with something else. What I would take away, this is personal, is this line. It doesn't make it that readable. Maybe if you could underline it, I don't know, make something
my co-founder has a whole story behind it and how his grandfather fought in a war, and they were called like the Thin Red Line or something like that. So it kind of ties into his own personal story. But I can make it go completely behind as opposed to passing through, perhaps. But here.
Yeah, I think so. Just on a few things here. So I think in terms of the colors, you mentioned a few different things, right? You mentioned warm and welcoming, approachable. Yeah. I agree. I think this color is a nice color for that. I think the only thing that I would actually say is that when it comes to some of the I mentioned accessibility and readability, some of the kind of, sometimes it's a little bit hard to read. Yeah, the contrast, exactly. Okay. And same for the yellow as well. So I think I'd probably look at having a slightly different variation, which could be a darker version.
Yeah.
Of this color.
So
the yellow, I think. Yeah, good.
Sorry, is it more about like the white on the coral kind of thing?
Yeah, so coral's a very difficult color to actually have the contrast be that good. So I think you probably want maybe a slightly darker version of that, and you can then maybe interchange them depending on how you're using it. So if you are going to have it as text where you want people to read it, you want to go for the darker version. If it's more just going to be a sort of graphic, you can stick to the original version. So yeah, and I would avoid the yellow text. I think whether it's going to be yellow text or it's going to be background, I'd try and avoid that because that is going to be hard to read.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when it comes to your other point around being too childish, I can kind of see where you're kind of going with that. I think I'd say it's more to do with the accents around it as opposed to the actual color. So if you go back to that poster, for example, on the screen you had,
I can't. How do I can't. I can't get past the. How do I? Sorry, I can't move the. Sorry.
That's right. So I'll explain why you're doing it. But essentially, on that poster, and even potentially here, it's not so much, but there's kind of a lot going on, and it's very busy with all the kind of accents. Yeah, exactly. So I know this is a very kind of common.
Yeah, I mean, this is
kind of common.
So it's a flyer. So I was trying to make it because I know people don't really read flyers. I kind of wanted to make it as punchy and as attention catching as possible.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is that it's kind of a trade-off between, like, if you are kind of going for the very kind of simplistic, when we talk about corporate is more kind of reducing noise, making things simple, like as simple as possible and clear to understand. Whereas the other side, more fun energy, comes from making things a bit louder, a bit different, unique. So it's kind of finding that balance. So I think I wouldn't necessarily worry about being childish, as you call it, because if you're trying to go for the more energy, the more welcoming, that kind of stuff, I think it's gonna hit it more. But if you wanted to reduce it, it will come with that trade-off that it will go a little bit, less kind of loud, less kind of eye-catching.
Would it be worth it to do like two kind of almost separate branding styles for like investors and corporate side, and then for our users? Or is that too much work?
I think one I think that'd be too much work, and two, I kind of think, like, you don't necessarily have to have two branding styles, but I think investors aren't going to be so focused on, like, this branding is not for me because I'm an investor. I think they're going to understand that this is a brand for your company. So I think it's important to kind of stick to that. And it's only if it gets in the way of actually comprehending the information. So if you are using these like yellows and pinks for like text in the pitch deck for investors, that is bad because they're not able to read it, and they're probably going to skip over it because it's hard to read. So you need to kind of get rid of that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't necessarily kind of not get rid of it, but fix those things. And once you've done that, I think you probably have the same brand across all of them.
Yeah, because I have another logo, which is here. It's more punchy. It's kind of recognizable from a distance kind of thing, but I don't think it necessarily kind of jives with the style of the rest of it. But at the same time, it's highly, highly recognizable. And I think that's something that's really good. So I'm not really sure if I should incorporate this or not.
Question I'd ask you, why are you thinking about changing the logo?
I'm not. I just made a few.
Oh, okay. So you have decided.
I mean, we're very much for this first one, but it is another option.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I think it is important to tie things in. So if you are going to go for this logo, which is a little bit different, you probably then want to incorporate some aspect of this throughout. As you can. You don't have to go crazy, but as in you do kind of want them to align a little bit, because that essentially, at the end of the day, that's what the brand is. That I'll say it kind of again, the brand is meant to be a consistent, small kind of promises to the user that make them memorize it and recall it easily. So I think it's all about that consistency. And so whatever you do, I kind of go for that. In terms of this one here, and what you have, I personally, I wasn't averse to the one you showed at the beginning. I thought it was quite interesting. I did think it was a little bit unique too. I don't think I've seen much like that. I actually quite liked the line going through. It gave it something, a little bit of an edge. And I think the second one was a little bit. It was very memorable, but it was very in my face. And it also wasn't quite necessarily clear. There wasn't maybe not much linked to what was actually going to happen next. Whereas this one, there is something.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Atty, I think you were next.
Thank you. I'll quickly try and share my. Hi. Sorry, I'm just looking at your name. I'm sorry, I'm really behind. Thanks so far for all your information, all your advice. It's really good. Right. Okay. So can you see my screen? It's a website called Sheetex.
Yeah.
We can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so I'm going to try and distill my questions and keep it quick. I have this logo, which is a sort of S. I'm not sure how well you can actually see it. I'll try and zoom in. It's kind of an S made out with, it's supposed to be like wires with loops at the end. It's a tech website, a tech t-shirt website for women in tech, basically. So I got a logo designed by a designer. And she also chose this color palette, which is like the hot red, which I chose, and then the kind of dark teal, I guess it is. And I take that throughout my website. On my Instagram, I try and use the same color palette, but my Instagram is much more fun and punchy. And I guess my question is twofold. First of all, is this logo appropriate for my business? If anybody cares to jump in. And does it look very different from my Instagram? And I know I've just shown you stuff really quickly. So those are my questions. I'm not being consistent. I don't think I'm being consistent.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. I think maybe starting on that last one and the consistency, I think, yeah, it is a little bit different between here where you've kind of got bold kind of big text, you've got imagery, and then you kind of have like plain background to kind of your header, compared to your Instagram, which has a little bit of texture. I assume it's kind of like this is coming from, is it from Canva again or from another tool?
Yeah, it's definitely Canva. Yeah.
yeah. So kind of a templates there. So it is slightly different. So I think you probably could tidy this up by unifying some of the fonts. So I think there is kind of a few different fonts we're seeing going on here, right? Like you've got one kind of font in the logo, which is more kind of a plain font. You've got a kind of funkier font then for the headline. And I think you've then got a different font for the body. So I think one way that could actually simplify this would be to just kind of align the fonts. And font goes a big way into actually creating some of that consistency. So that's one thing which is more kind of like low hanging fruit. And same for your Instagram as well, because I think on Canva you can actually edit the font, right? So I think again the font is quite different here as well, and you've got different types. So simply by kind of align the font, I think that would bring some unity to all of them.
Okay, so a very quick question just on that, because I made my website and I really love having fun on Canva and trying new things. Is that a bad idea? Or should I be trying to use the same font all the time? Do you think?
I think so. It's again, if possible, it's good to actually stick to a font, and the reason is because it's about the recall of your brand, right? So the idea is that if someone was to see your Instagram post separately, could they relate this back to Sheetex?
Okay,
that's the kind of goal.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thanks very much. I'll stop sharing. Sorry, how do I do that? Oh, God. Sorry, I'm having a moment trying to stop sharing. You can kick me out if you want.
Can I do that? I don't even know if I can.
Sorry. Oh God, this is really.
I don't think
I might be able to.
Sorry, I'm having a real brain fog.
A red stop sharing.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, we've got quite a lot to get through because a lot of people. So if we can't get to you, apologies. I'm going just in the order of people that said yes, and then I know people raised their hand as well. So Tanaka, we have you next.
Yes. Just give me a moment. Let me just share my screen. Oops. Let me just close that. Everyone can see?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are a marketplace. We do B2B and B2C. And I just wanted to get feedback or general feel on like the design that we've already done for our platform. So we basically, the nice thing for those who don't have Canva, you can create like a brand kit, which basically just gives you a guideline on everything that we've done. So our company is called Aurora Borealis in Sika, and this is the color palette that we chose. And our brand is called, our product is called Kutinga.mw. We like the auroral thing, but we wanted to give our brand an easier name for the market that we are targeting. So basically, this is the brand, the company brand, and then this is the product that we are building a platform for. So I think I'm very particular about consistency, and obviously trying to get that through the team, like the design team, to make sure that they have same vision is kind of, I think it's kind of hard. So this is our social media page. We wanted to go with a bordered frame, but there's a whole lot of consensus about, oh, try use this different size so that you can get more width space or length space around on Instagram, like the feed. But I like the bordered theme, and then but like, as you can see, when it comes to like looking at it at the grid view, it doesn't really look as good. That's there. Our logo, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's basically a basket, but it's turned into a K. So that goes hand in hand with our concept of like buying and selling, which is basically what also Kutinga means in the language. And then for our website, I just used WordPress. It's just so much easier, much quicker and faster. But we used a lot of what do you call this? Icons and animations, which we found from Icon Scout, to kind of like, because we didn't have like stock images and stuff like that. So to kind of give us a little bit of more feeling around it. And I think for us, the big thing, well, to be a little bit modern and consistent, we went for the rounded edges. I know it's silly, but it's something like it gives kind of like a little bit of elegance, rounded edges versus corners and stuff like that. So I just wanted feedback on what is our brand a little bit consistent, and yeah, just a general feel, like opinions.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think I'd probably start with, because we're on the website here, and a nice one to talk about now to be first impressions for this website. So if we go back to the homepage, a good test that I always do is called a 5-second test. And essentially that is, you would put this website in front of someone that doesn't know your product. They look at it for 5 seconds, and then you take it away from them and then ask them what you do. And so I think that is something that I think would be good to think about here, which is obviously it's not all over the visual side, but it's more kind of like the actual content and what people are understanding. Because I think the only thing when I saw this, especially the top section, if you scroll up, it isn't 100% clear what exactly you do. So I think obviously you're saying you thrive on success, and that's obviously good. But if I was to come on here and I was to now want to get an idea of what you do, I'd have to kind of look around a bit more and have to put in a little bit more effort. And the same way how investors are busy on their phones looking at your website, same as customers as well. They're obviously looking through many things. So I think that's probably one thing I'd probably say for this website here is try and kind of communicate your value at the very beginning, what you do and what your value is. So I think you've just kind of got it here on this, whether you already got an established business, create a different product. Yeah, so this second paragraph here is quite good, actually then starting to explain that. But again, I've got to scroll down to actually see that.
Yeah, I think it's this padding.
Yeah. And potentially kind of, it would be good to maybe have a bit more of a succinct version of that maybe could actually replace this kind of headline you've got here. Because I think the headline is good, but I don't know if that, if you had to say what's the number one takeaway you want people to have from your website, that's essentially kind of what you want to try and anchor on. And I think that hierarchy is something that will be good to look at.
Okay. Any other feedback? Logo, Instagram, 2 different brand colors, or anything?
I think with the Instagram, I think there is it's always contentious on like whether we should optimize for the actual content itself or whether we should optimize for this grid, like what looks nice. I think I don't know if I have a strong stance on it, but I think one thing that I would say is that I think about kind of the threshold of kind of like when you come onto a page, what do you think about it? When we've got some of this text that's kind of like left aligned right into the edge, it does kind of look a little bit more like it's unfinished or it's a mistake compared to if it was to be kind of actually centered and you have the kind of actually spacing between there. So I think it is kind of like small things like that around the kind of margin and the pattern you mentioned, I think would actually help here. I'd probably prioritize that. And I think you can do that where it can be like that and it obviously won't look that bad. It still should look good when you actually view the post as well. So I think small things like that, I think I would actually tweak, because I think when you see this and you see the kind of edge, if you think that someone's kind of making a mistake every time, it does automatically kind of make you trust the brand less and trust the concept a little bit less. So if you scroll down a little bit, like your post that actually kind of looks quite clear and neat is this reminder notification, just simply because it's kind of the only ones here that actually kind of has a nice breathing room around it. And so I think kind of maybe creating some more that have a bit of that breathing room, images that you have can overlap and kind of can go out, but when it comes to the text and the logo, I bring them in just a little bit.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Awesome. Jin, do you want to bring up your Instagram, was it Instagram posts that you posted in the chat? Is she there? I'm just having a look through. I'm not sure. Okay. In that case, Kofo, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, so just a quick one, Ati. I'm just reading the chat. Ati had a good point around less text but bigger for the Instagram post. I definitely agree with that. Again, short attention span, good to kind of keep people hooked with nice big text.
Kofo, we can see your screen but can't hear you. I don't know if you're
on mute. Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, hello, hi DJ. So this is, oh God, let me just go back to the very first screen. Okay, so I work for a digital health platform called Nidea Health. So it's a mobile health platform for the prevention of lifestyle disease. So this is our branding. So the logo is at the top right-hand corner. It's a male, female. I've got that in the picture on the first slide. Okay, and then here I talk about the problem. In terms of our colors, they're black, fuchsia pink, gray, and white. And then here's the problem facing governments, and essentially preventable lifestyle disease will cost them billions of pounds, both governments and corporations. And then that would lead to enterprises experiencing falls in productivity and employees developing preventable lifestyle diseases such as obesity and type 2 diabetes. And then here's a solution page. And this is essentially talks about how companies can potentially use Nidea. So essentially what we do is we will survey their employee population and capture their data. From that, they will be denoted with a risk profile that could be high, medium, or low. They will then be put in touch with a healthcare practitioner, and then they essentially will begin their health journey. And the head of wellness within the organization, they can view the profiles of all their employees. So that's essentially it. I'm not going to go into too much depth, into too much detail, because I want to show the website as well. You just bear with me really quickly. Oh yeah, so this is a website. Can you see that? Can you see the website?
No, we're still on the slide. On the opportunity slide.
I done. Oh damn it! Just bear with me 1 second. Let me just shut that down. Okay, can I just shut this down? Okay, can you see? If you can't see it, just bear with me 1 second. Can you see it now or not?
No, I think you stopped sharing. Yeah, I think you were sharing just.
Okay,
yeah, so
can I just quickly share again? Just bear with me. Sorry everyone. Let me just quickly share again, share screen. Okay, can you see it now? Can you see it now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Okay. So this is a website, and essentially we've been trying to stick with the same colors again. And so the fuchsia, what's it? The fuchsia pink, the gray, the black, and on this page, we essentially say who we are. So Nisea, the mobile platform for the prevention of lifestyle diseases. So given your feedback, I can take it.
Cool, okay. So I guess starting with this this screen here, I'm going to mention again, contrast is probably the...
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, contrast is probably the biggest thing here, because some of these, I think there's text. I'm not sure if it's meant to be faded out.
I did that. I did so that if that's wrong, yeah, let me know.
Yeah, because it's quite hard to read some of that text there. So like you've got the headline, American Platform for Prevention of Lifestyle Disease, but on that background, it's very hard to read. So I think I definitely kind of bring this out more. I think probably try and stick to kind of maybe the white if you're going to go this background for the text, so you can actually read it. And then I would consider maybe having some kind of background, like for the header. Again, it is still quite hard to read those sections there. So maybe actually having like a background, a header with a background behind it. And then yeah, I think probably contrast will be the main thing I'd say for now. Like I think we want to make sure, and I'll give a tool. I share a tool as well that can be shared around, that you can kind of compare the contrast. I just want to make sure that actually kind of text stands out. Again, because with that pink and the white, it's still quite hard to read a bit when the pink is the background and the white in color. Yeah. So that I think probably is the main thing I'd say there. And then just on your, I know you didn't ask, but I think just kind of sort of on your pitch deck, I think there's a couple of things there. There's a technique which is I don't know if it's an official name, but I just call it this. It's called like shout, speak, and whisper. And essentially, it's imagining if you were trying to convey information to people. Let's say you were a bouncer, and people were coming past you, and as they were entering the building, you had to share information with them. And you could either shout the information to them, you could speak it to them in normal voice, or you could whisper. And this is how everyone could think about their websites, their pitch deck, that kind of stuff. And essentially is, what information do you want them to take away? And so I saw kind of on the first couple of slides of your pitch deck, there was kind of a lot of capitalized text, a lot of bolding. There was kind of a grid where you had many different colors with the kind of pink highlights. And for me, there's a lot of shouting. And the issue is when you have a lot of shouting is in life, if I was kind of shout multiple things at once to someone, you'd end up hearing nothing, right? So you kind of really have to be careful with how you use the kind of different formats, whether you're having capitalized text, whether you're going to bold text, and the size of the text. And so one way to think about that is the whole like shout, speak, whisper. So for each slide you're designing, and for each website you're designing, think about what information you want to shout to them, which is like critical, that they can't leave this page without figuring that out. Think about what information you want to speak to them, which the majority they want to hear. And then the last one is whisper. And that's for the kind of really keen people, and people that kind of really want to dig in. What's that extra information they want? But you want to have it in a whisper format, aka maybe like small text or a footnote, because only certain people are going to want that. So you don't want to amp that for everyone, because that'll become more noisy.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I think there was only one other person that wanted to share, so it's going to have to be really quick, I'm afraid. But is it Kaulat? Do you want to Kofi?
Yes, thank you. Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be real quick. I just want to briefly walk through my pitch deck, and then we'll criticize it design wise.
What happened to my information on it? It's disappeared.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So first I would appreciate your comment on the logo. The logo was first coined when I started doing when I founded the company as a solopreneur. So this was what brought about this logo, which happens to have my name in it. So I want to know what you think about a company or a startup that has a logo with, like, a person's name in it. And yeah, I'll just briefly walk through the pitch deck and just criticize it design wise. So we help connect technical talents to companies globally. And the problem we see here majorly is is the issue of talents finding it hard to get jobs and companies finding it hard to hire diverse talents. And we are sort of connecting these two, and our products basically for the talents and for the companies. And then we talk about our revenue generators. Then the market here is just an image, and I do a lot of the talking during live pitches majorly. And then a section for the competition, and yeah, our traction on different platforms, and the pre-launch go-to-market strategy and the post-launch go-to-market strategy. Then our vision 12 months from launch, our ask, and talking about basically what we're asking for, and then the contact. So design-wise, what do you think of this pitch deck? And also, let me just chip this in so you talk about it together. I want to show you our website. The full pages are not live yet, but we're going for a dark themed website. So if you look at this, there's like we have a podcast. There's a podcast page where we basically I interview tech professionals and talk to them about their careers, which has been very interesting. So what do you think of this dark feel we're going for on the website? The logo, as you can see up here, which I am not, which we are not changing, except it is really an issue. And yes, I think that's all.
Cool.
I want to ask.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so I guess just starting with the logo, I think the question around, is it, having a name in it? Typically when you have, by X, it probably would be around, if it's a kind of a bigger company, a bigger brand that actually has created this product. So it's more to give you extra recognition through that. So I don't know necessarily if it would benefit you too much, depending on how much, kind of brand awareness you have personally. If it's just to increase your own personal awareness, that can help, but I'm not sure if I'd put it in there and take away from the company itself. So I'd probably, unless you have a kind of big brand on your own personal, it might be better to have it just as the company name. And then the logo itself, I think, is quite interesting. You've got interesting font. You've got a nice little kind of icon there, which could also be used. That icon could be alone if you need to use it for like smaller avatars and that kind of stuff. So I think that's a good start. So I think, yeah, the logo is not too bad, kind of excluding the kind of name. The second thing was the pitch deck. So I think, the pitch deck, I think I'd also think about the whole shout, speak, whisper, because again, there was a lot of kind of capital letters when it comes to information. So it's very hard for me to, at a glance, be able to know what am I meant to take away from this. There was a lot of bold text as well. So you want to kind of make sure you have that hierarchy of kind of the most important things are in bold. The general information is just in a normal color, is in normal font weight. So I'd probably do a little bit less bolding, a little bit less capitalization, because there's too much shouting happening at me at once, especially in combination with, I think you've got quite an interesting color palette, which is kind of very bold, very bright. And so I think if you're going to have that kind of the bold, bright color palette, don't also combine that with lots of kind of heavy bolding, heavy text, that kind of stuff. So I think I'd probably say overall for your pitch deck, I think you've done some good things here along the way. You've got some good kind of structuring and framing information, but I just trying to kind of like quieten it down noise-wise a little bit by reducing some of the things, whether it's bolding, capitalization, taking out a couple of colors here and there maybe, just to kind of reduce the noise so that I can actually focus on some key things. And the very last bit around the website, I think the dark theme looks very nice, very on trend. Just be careful that you're not going to deviate too much away from, I guess, the other brand that's on the pitch deck, because I don't know if I'd be able to immediately put two and two together of the same companies. It kind of feels like one was made by someone and one was made by someone else. So I'd just be a little bit cautious there. Like if you are going to go for a dark theme is it for a particular reason, or is it just a trendy? But if it is for a reason, a good one, maybe try and incorporate that into your deck as well to have that consistency. But yeah, try and be consistent if you can, rather than having, you know, a light theme pitch deck and then a dark theme website.
Yeah, thank you. Quick one. I'm just going to show you our color, sort of color palettes, because we worked with a designer to come up with this, and this was the colors. These are the colors that we use across website and everything for the branding. And I would like to get your feedback about how these colors mix and how we're currently using it.
Just really quickly, can you do this in like 30 seconds or less, because we're going to move on to the next speaker. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think I'd have to kind of go back and look at any more details to give a really accurate answer here. I think I'll say the fonts are nice. I think the font selections are pretty good. The colors in isolation are pretty good. I think you've got to be careful with the oranges and the yellows, again, with accessibility and the contrast. And I think just kind of try and use them a bit. There's a lot of kind of vibrancy going on there. So it's a nice, vibrant palette. But I think if you put them together too much, it can be quite a lot on your face. So I'd probably try and use them sparingly, or use one rather than both all at the same time.
Yeah, thank you very much, DJ.
Awesome. Thank you so much, DJ. If anybody wants to follow up with you, do you want to just quickly post your LinkedIn or something here, or any way that people can follow up, and then we can go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just going to put my website in. That's probably the quickest way, zerotodesign.com. Yeah, anyone feel free to reach out. Hopefully that was useful. And yes, it was a pleasure.
Useful. Thanks so much. Everybody else stay on. We've got Agatha here in the room already, and Em is going to take over from this point.